Hello and welcome back to The Hatch. I'm Rosie Murphy.
And I'm Sammy Roth. This is the podcast where we talk about loss.
We are on Season 2, Episode 3, Orientation. I love this episode. I'm so excited to talk about it. And I'm equally excited that we have an interview with Francois Chau, who played Dr. Pierre Chang and has gone by some other names as well.
Dr. Marvin Candle, Dr. Edward Haliwax. We go into the whole thing. It's fun to hear his perspective. It's a unique one.
Let's get to it. Dear listeners, as you know, we start every episode with a hot take. I'm sorry, I just got back from a baseball game and I feel like I'm talking like a baseball announcer, but I'm just going to lean into it. Sammy, what's your hot take?
My hot take. So this is a little bit more of a personal hot take. I just love that in The Hatch, and you see this when Jack and Locke are watching the orientation film, I love that there's a photo of Joshua Tree National Park in The Hatch.
There is.
It's just kind of there.
Aww,
and
that makes me happy.
Yeah, and for our listeners who may be new, I live in Palm Springs, California, near Joshua Tree. Rosie used to live here as well, and sort of a beloved spot for those of us here in the desert in California, and just pretty fun for me to see it like sitting there in the hatch of all the places that they could have had had an outdoor shot from. They went and got on the Joshua Tree. I wonder if it was Kelvin, was it Radzinski? Who knows?
Right. Or if it was the Dharma folks who built it. I mean, it seems in line with their ethos, you know?
I guess so. They were kind of...
Joshua Tree is kind of known as kind of a hippie, go watch the meteor shower, go get lost, go to the UFO conference, like...
That's true.
Fringe science has a bit of a place in Joshua Tree, so...
That's a very good point. Thank you for explaining my hot take. That was actually very useful.
Not a problem.
What is your hot take?
So... do we ever find out what would have happened if they got the numbers wrong, but still pressed execute? Because they very nearly do. John is typing in the numbers, and he ends with 32 instead of 42. And then Jack comes back and corrects him, but what would have happened if they had just pressed execute? Do we know?
No, because I don't think we ever see that happen.
I don't either.
Huh. I feel like we should come up with some hilarious possibility of what would happen, but I'm not funny enough.
I don't know. I don't have a good answer for it, but I guess I was thinking about that question, I was thinking about the mechanics of the numbers and like, why do they have to enter the numbers? Why can't they just press the button? I guess it's just the way it works, and it's a plot device as well. But I don't think that's ever explained.
I would be curious, because you and I are pretty serious Lost fans, but we're maybe not the most absolute hardcore dedicated, watch the show 6 times for all the details. If any of our listeners have a answer for this or a theory about why they had to push the button, tell us. We'd like to hear it.
So.
Orientation.
John Locke?
Jack Shepherd.
Go on.
I just... No, I mean, there's so much to talk about. I think it's interesting. To me, Orientation sort of feels like the third part of a 3-part premiere to Season 2. And I felt that because, like, it's sort of like one continuous plot the first few episodes where it's what happens when they go into the hatch. You get that really drawn-out build-out with Jack pointing the gun at Locke and Desmond is there. And what happens with the people on the raft as well. And it just feels like a continuous story that's building to the dramatic Jack-Locke confrontation at the end of this.
Why do you find it so hard to believe? Why do you find it so easy? It's never been easy.
Incredible line.
It really is. And so I liked that aspect of it. It felt like this was, this was all the setup for Season 2, and now we've gotten there, and I mean, it's amazing setup.
Yeah, and you're right. We are talking about all the same themes of as we were in Man of Science, Man of Faith. In terms of John is very ready to believe that he needs to push the button, that he needs to do this work, and Jack, despite having seen evidence of some weird electromagnetic force when he walks into the hatch and his key gets pulled away from his chest, refuses to believe that there's anything to this. And
I think the thing that I find most interesting on the note of Jack in this episode is that, yes, he doesn't want to believe, but clearly there's this huge internal struggle happening where he's afraid, perhaps, that he might believe. And that's how I read it.
I think we really see that when he chases Desmond out of the hatch and he screams at him, "Why are you running? You don't even know what you're running from."
Right. Like,
And
did Jack just
it's
run
one of
out?
those moments where we ask, like, why is Jack so upset about this? But I think you're right. I think that's evidence of an internal conflict. Like, you don't even know what you're running from. How can you not know? How can I not know? And how is it possible that you exist, Desmond, right? Like, how is it possible that you have done this for 3 years?
Did you ever think that maybe they put you down here to push a button every 100 minutes just to see if you would? That all of this, the computer, the button, is just a mind game, an experiment.
Every single day.
But Jack, like, cannot reconcile the idea that someone like Desmond exists because he seems so irrational, right? And I think that's part of what Jack is getting so mad about.
I think the other part that he's getting so mad about is the fact that he recognizes Desmond, which Locke really picks up on and sort of needles him about.
Right, right. And that is creepy and maybe a bit supernatural.
Yeah, and I don't know, to me that, I feel like that is probably pretty largely the driver of Jack's internal conflict. I mean, that's my, because he, when Locke says to Jack in the hatch, like, did it bother you that you recognized him? Mm-hmm. And Jack doesn't have a response to that. And I mean, then when he runs after Desmond and screams at him, it's really, what really breaks him down at the end is when Desmond says, "Oh, I remember where you're from. We were at the stadium and there was the girl, and did you fix her?" And
Is she okay? The girl.
It doesn't matter.
What happened to her?
It doesn't matter.
How can you say it doesn't?
I married her!
that was the most Jack moment of all time.
Oh my God, I know. And Desmond says something to follow up, like, "So you're not married anymore?" And that just sets Jack over the edge.
But but definitely you're right. Like, Jack would not be running out and chasing Desmond into the jungle and holding him at gunpoint and, like, screaming at him about how nothing is going to happen unless there's a big part of Jack that's actually worried that something is going to happen.
That's very afraid that something... And Jack wouldn't have gone back.
It's true.
If part of him didn't believe, right? Or didn't fear, I should say. He doesn't have to believe to be afraid that...
Right.
Of the specter of something, right?
Well, that's interesting, because Desmond doesn't necessarily believe either, which, like, we sort of pick up on from watching this episode. Like, he says he hopes it's not true, right. but that was also what Henry and Cusick said to us, which was that, the way he played this character was as someone who asked, what if, but what if it's real? I got to do this just in case.
And what if it's real? Not if it's real, then I hope for things, but if it's real, then I'm afraid of things.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
That's definitely Jack here as well. You're right. It's not a belief thing.
We can't take the risk that this is real.
Yeah. And it goes against all of his instinct.
Yeah. Well, and something that's interesting about this is when Jack comes back into the hatch and gives John the final number, John, like, it really feels like John is testing him. Like, he could have just entered 42 and pressed execute and it would have been done. But he chooses this moment while this timer is counting down to have a bit of a standoff with Jack, to sort of make him say, "Okay, we're going to push the button." You know what I mean?
Yeah, it almost feels like Locke doesn't think he's really fulfilling his destiny unless he can also convince Jack along with him.
So, holding that thought, one of my questions coming away from this episode is, like, what made John, I mean, really, why did John find it so easy to believe? Like, what made him believe that he needed to push this button?
What made him believe that he has a destiny?
Yeah, and I think those things are linked, but, like, what does he have so far? He has Desmond, he has the orientation video, and that's kind of, those are the only two people who've told him he needs to push this button.
Right. But it has...
And he's ready and willing to believe. And maybe it's because he's been believing in the hatch for so long already.
I think that's part of it. I mean, the button has to be it because he opened the hatch. And
and that was his destiny.
And there's that, I mean, I love the moment when he's alone and sort of breaking down when he thinks he's going to not be able to push the button. And he screams again, what am I supposed to do? Which is so reminiscent of last year at the end of Deus Ex Machina, while Boone is dying and he's pounding on the hatch, why are you doing this to me? Except this time there's no Desmond to answer. Desmond is gone.
Right. Well, and in both of those moments, I mean, it's effectively a prayer,
Yes.
right? Like it's a call to some cosmic,
Absolutely.
to the island to give him direction. And in both cases, the island kind of does. I'm always interested in, like, what specifically we learn from the flashback that we see reflected in island time. And I think part of that here might be John's sort of dissatisfaction with everybody else's answers. Like, I think part of what we see in the flashback is that John is open to, and we've kind of alluded to this, but John is open to the idea of kind of getting over the con, but he hasn't found anything.
I was just saying any purpose that replaces the purpose of resolving what happened
Exactly.
with his father.
Right, any greater purpose. And he has tried a number of things, right? He's tried the grief counseling, he's tried a relationship with Helen, and these things just won't sort of do it for him.
They won't fill that hole.
And maybe
in his
this
heart.
is just the latest. This is the latest thing he's trying. Like, I'm gonna push this button, and we'll see where it goes.
Can I do one more sort of semi-hindsight? Just the scene, and I can't believe we didn't talk about this. The scene with Anthony Cooper in the car, where he's like, you're not wanted. Why? There is no why.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like we had this conversation about him last year as well, so I apologize for repeating myself, but if there was anyone on the show who deserved to be murdered, it was definitely this guy.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I want to be on record as opposing murder, but this guy is the worst. He's the worst.
I believe you're already on record as being
Can't
opposed
say it
to
enough.
murder.
Anyway, so should we listen to Francois Chau?
I think that would be good.
He played, as we said at the top, he was Dr. Chang, aka Dr. Candle, aka Dr. Other Things, and he's fun.
And you met him at his home in Los Angeles?
Yes, we met at his home in Los Angeles. We sat down in one of the bedrooms in his house and had a really fun conversation.
Let's listen.
Francois, thanks very much for doing this. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure.
So let's start at the beginning. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got cast as this character?
Well, let's see. It's a long time now, but as an actor, as usual, I get an audition to go in and read for something, and this was just one of those times. They said, "Oh, they're casting this part in Lost," and it's it was just a doctor doing an orientation film, and it was it's a monologue about, like, a 2-page monologue, and usually when you go in for an audition, it's only a couple of pages and you have, like, 5-6 lines and so forth. But this time it was like, whoa, and I usually memorize everything, so I thought, oh, I guess I better try memorizing this.
It's a lot to memorize.
It was. So it was, I went in, I had memorized it. I did it in the first take, and as soon as I finished, everybody's like, "Ooh, man, that was good." That was like, for myself, it was like, "Oh, I got through it," and that was pretty much it. And I imagine to this day, I think it because I memorized it and I did it. It's probably why they cast me. Yeah.
Probably the only one who memorized it.
Yeah, I don't know how everybody else did it, but yeah, it was pretty intense.
Did you have any idea that it was this big cultural phenomenon, and that you were going to be this, like, mysterious character that people were obsessed with?
No, not at all. Not at all. Actually, this was supposed to be just a one-time deal.
Oh.
This was like, as far as I understood it, it was just, they find this videotape of this, orientation film, and that was as far as they got, and it was just that one time. We did it, and then a couple months later, they called and said, "Hey, we're going to do just a little bit more. Can you do it?" And I said, "Sure."
Oh, that was when there was that clip that was cut out of the
right,
original?
something they then they find more film.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then you see some more of it, and then after that they called again and said, "Oh, we're going to do another one, at these certain dates. So keep it open and stuff. And then from then on, it just kept going.
Yeah, I think by my count, I think you did like 5 or 6 of these by the end of these videos.
Yes.
Like every different station in the end.
Almost, right.
Yeah.
And I kind of understand now why, it was, like the first time I did it, I was Dr.
Marvin Candle.
Marvin Candle, right?
Yeah.
And then the second one, after that, I got the script and I go, wait, that's not me. What's this? It was totally different, another name. And then so they kept changing names and stuff. So I thought, I'm not sure why, but by the end, they wrote it something that sort of explains why he does all these aliases.
A little bit.
Yeah, kind of.
So I guess you weren't coming up with all of the Candle names. It was all like Candle.
Right, yeah. Wickman.
Yeah, and Hallowell.
Right.
I always wondered what was up with that.
I think they were just, they must have been sitting around going, hey, let's just make it.
Did you, did you have any, were you following the show as you did this?
I watched the pilot.
Yeah.
I thought it was great. And then I just I didn't watch too much afterwards because the pilot was great. I kept thinking, wow, what are they going to do? It's just a bunch of people stuck on this island. How much can you, what can you come up with? Little did I know. And then once I got the gig as the doctor, and it started airing, and people would see me and they go, they would ask me questions about, in this episode when this happened and this happened, what does that mean and stuff like that. And I was like, well, geez, I don't know. I haven't been watching, so I don't know what's going on. So I thought, okay, I better watch just in case, more people ask me what's happening. At least I can answer them and say, well, I think it's this, but I'm not sure, like everybody else.
Like everybody else, yeah.
So I watched it, I think, starting the end of the second season, or maybe the beginning of the third season, when they did the flash forward.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it was the end of the third season when they finally flashed forward.
Right, and I thought, wow, that was pretty interesting. And then, of course, all my friends who were watching it going, this is great. It just really got hooked on it. And I was like, okay. Finally, when I watched it, I thought, oh man, they're right. So watching, you go, oh shit, I'm getting hooked on this.
Yeah. It's funny because that was I put out a call to our listeners, what do you want us to ask Dr. Chang?
Right.
And one of the common questions we got was, what were his theories about the character? I think people still want to know, what did you think was going on?
I have no idea.
Yeah. How as an actor did you approach that? Being this guy, because I'm sure this was probably pretty different than, most other things you've done, just sort of popping in on occasion into this crazy mythology and all this other stuff happening. Did you know enough about your character to feel like you could do your job as an actor? How do you even approach a role like that?
That's a great question, because on this particular one, it was almost backwards of what you usually get to do. Especially with this show, where by the time, by the second season, where it was just a huge hit, and they got very, security was like really crazy. I wouldn't get my stuff until like the night before.
Wow.
And then, most of them were like these long monologues. So after a while I said, hey guys, maybe like a couple of days ahead might be better, because I don't know if I can memorize that fast. But you get the night before, and then sometimes I come on set and I look at the call sheet, and they have fake names for different characters, so that in case somebody stole or something like this, I don't know.
Right.
And I go, who's this? But all that, it was very, the security was tight. So the stuff that like the little orientation stuff, you get bits and pieces, right? And there's not really that much to work on. You go, it's just a guy doing this kind of dry educational film kind of thing.
Yeah.
So as we kept doing it, it was, and a lot of fans say, oh, that was so creepy, and that was so weird, and that was so this and that. And I was like, okay. But as we got along, and then as the character in the later seasons got more time and story time, I kept going, wow. By that time, I went, wow, this Dr. Chang is like a real jerk.
Oh, I'm glad you said that because I was going to bring that
yeah,
up.
I'm going, well, how, by that time it was too late. I can't change any stuff. I'm like, I guess I got to kind of go along with it because I'm going, what happened? Why was it? All of a sudden I go, oh shit, I'm a bad person kind of. So, if I had known that in the beginning, I don't know if it would have changed anything. But by that time it was like, oh well, the train is going. I'm on it. Yeah. I just got to keep going.
So I guess you didn't have a lot of input into who this guy was going to be.
No. It was, it was pretty. I think I watch and I go, well, I think the viewers kind of put into the character what they, what they want him to be or what they think he is or this and that. Because in the later ones, as I got a little more idea of what the viewers were going, and I got all this mail about, he's, I watch it and I was so scared and I was just, so I started trying to, just a little bit of making it a little more, I don't know, ambiguous or a little weird in some way, that it was, it wasn't just a straight, educational video kind of thing.
Right. One of the ones I was thinking of was the flame station where you say have the hostiles incurred this station, enter 7-7, which when you watch that it's creepy as hell because then it's like they enter 7-7 and the whole thing explodes.
Right.
But I don't know, I guess when they give you that script you probably don't know that the place is going to explode, right?
I just said the words.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Another thing from that first video that I was curious about, your character doesn't move his arm the whole time.
Right.
Did they talk to you about that? Is that something you like had to be real careful about?
No, I think the idea was, he had a prosthetic.
Okay.
Because I came in and then at first with makeup, they were trying to at least make this part of the hand look kind of, like plasticky or waxy.
So like up to your wrist and a little further.
Right.
Yeah.
If in case it was showing or something. But then they decided, it doesn't really look like it's anything. So we decided maybe just not, kind of make it look like it was not a good hand or something. And I don't know if I stuck my hand in my pocket or something like that.
I think it was, my
recollection is
outside, yeah, kind of stiff there.
So, yeah. Just, I guess, a hint of, there's something weird with his arm.
Yeah. Which it's one of the things I love about Lost, because people wonder about that, and then like 4 years later, you see the incident, and his arm gets chopped off. Anyway, what by the way, did you film these? Did you go to Hawaii to film these videos, or were you like on studio in LA?
The first one was when I got the job. I thought, hey, Hawaii, it's great. And then they called and said, oh yeah, we're going to be filming it over at Burbank. I said, Burbank? What do you mean? Yeah, we filmed that first one. If you really look at the background and stuff, it was the set of Alias.
The show Alias? Yeah, I watched Alias.
Yeah. So, because it was a J.J. Abrams thing.
Yeah.
So we just go there. We went there, and then when they were finished, we came in for like an hour or so and set up there, and funny. We filmed it there.
Was that like where they had the spy agency on Alias?
Yeah, it was like a glass, kind of glass background.
Yeah, I remember that.
Right? Yeah. So yeah, that first one and the second one were both done there.
Okay.
And then after that, it was Hawaii.
Okay,
yeah.
So you did eventually get to go have fun on set in Hawaii. Yeah. So since season 5, so you get to the island, and like you said, you kind of like turn out to be a jerk.
Right.
How did it change how you played that character to finally get to like be on the island and know a little bit about who he was? What was that like to transition from the guy in the videos to, I'm actually Pierre Chang now?
Right. Like I say, by that time, I couldn't really, do anything to change the character other than what you see on the videos. Because on the videos, he wasn't really, I didn't feel like he was putting on a character doing the thing. It was just him doing it. Whatever the character, Pierre Chang was just doing these videos.
Yeah.
So I just kind of kept it the way it was. If the guy wasn't doing a video, this is how he would be in real life or whatever. Because once we got into season 5, I had, I had a wife, I had a kid, I had this and that. I was doing all sorts of, Yeah, it was, by that time, it was kind of too late. I was a jerk, and that's it.
I hope you had fun at least getting to go and actually like play with the other characters.
Oh yeah, it was great because people would ask me, "Oh, how was it working with so and so?" And the first couple of seasons, and I was like, "Well, I wouldn't know because I would just fly to Hawaii, go to the studio. It's me filming the film, and then that was it. I didn't get to interact with anybody else. It was just it was just me. Not until the fifth season, yeah. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't like I didn't feel like I'm just kind of not part of it. By that time, it was the show was a big hit, and like I say, man, Lost fans are amazing because I found out that if you're a Lost fan, you're like 100% in there.
Yes.
And if you're not, you kind of go, it was okay, it was good, whatever, right? But Lost fans are like, man, they know every little thing, and they all the information. Now they watch episodes, and they can tie everything together, and it's like, whoa, you guys know a lot more than I ever will know about stuff.
I mean, I think that's why we have an audience for a podcast 8 years after it ended.
Yes.
We just did a survey of our listeners, and originally when we were thinking about how to do this, we thought, okay, people will watch the episodes with us as we go.
Right.
And then I started to realize, like, okay, it kind of seems like they aren't really watching them with us. So you did a survey, and we asked how many times have you watched the show, and it turns out basically everyone's already watched it like 4 times,
right.
And they know the episodes well enough that they don't have to.
Yeah.
It's real intense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you?
That's like me with the original Star Trek.
Yeah.
I must have, when I was a kid growing up, I watched it. I was like all the time. Now, you can say like a couple lines from one episode, and I'll probably know where it's from, or it's like intense fan craziness.
Okay, so you got to be a part of the version of that, I guess, the modern version, which is Lost.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to me that we always hear the audition stories for the actors that we interview. And this is perhaps the most interesting one to me, because imagine getting the script for the orientation video and just saying like, and what you would think, like, what in the world? That's got to be the craziest thing, especially if they're keeping so many things under wraps and you really don't know who this person is or how they're going to play in, even if you've already seen the pilot, which I think Francois said he had.
Yeah, you gotta think he looks at it like, what kind of show is this?
Yeah.
No, it's pretty weird. I mean, the thing that stood out to me was that I feel like we've heard from several actors now about just like from Henry and Cusick, and we'll hear this later from Michael Emerson as well, and now Francois, like having to go in and play these mysterious characters without knowing anything about who they are or where they came from. It's like, that's got to be such a challenge as an actor. And what's amazing to me is that it works out so well in the end.
Yeah.
Like, you watch that orientation film and the videos that he does later before you get his backstory, and it's like, he's mysterious and he's kind of creepy, and you feel like he has this sort of all-knowing, kind of menacing feel at times, and it's like, but he's not doing any of that. Or, I mean, he doesn't know enough to, and it's like he said, he's just thinking like, oh, this is an educational film. But somehow these guys who, are these actors going into these roles, like, they just somehow keep nailing it, despite the fact that they don't. And it just feels like, wow, that's clearly not how acting works most of the time.
Right. Well, and I think that goes back to what Ian told us about how it becomes kind of a co-creation between the actor and the writer, right? Like, the actor chooses to portray it a certain way, and then the writers kind of know what they're working with, and then they say, okay,
Desmond is an angel.
We do this with, with this angelic Desmond in mind, or with this particular type of mad scientist vibe in mind. And it's interesting to see that. I don't know enough about television to know how common or uncommon that is, but I think that's got to be part of the reason that works.
It does. I think you're totally right. I also love the prosthetic arm bit that they tried to make his hand look fake, and they're like, it's not working. Just keep your arm at your side. And it's such a great payoff. I mean, it's horrible, but such a great payoff. Like, 5 years down the road.
About that.
You remember when the incident's happening and his arm gets, like spliced?
Yeah, I do now. I mean, that was a pretty small detail, though. I had forgotten.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway. We'll be back next week. We'll be watching... What is next week's episode? It's Everybody Loves Hugo. Of course it is.
Mm-hmm. Everybody Hates Hugo.
Oh. You're right. Everybody Loves Hugo is the Season 6 version. Good call.
Yes.
And we've got... we'll be playing the first part of an interview we did with Rick Romer, who was the set decorator. He had a lot to do with the look and feel of the hatch. Super interesting guy. Lives in Hawaii. Totally unique perspective on the show.
Let's just run down the usual stuff. We are on Facebook at facebook.com/thehatchpodcast. We are on Twitter at thehatchpodcast. Come chat to us. We are there. You can also give us a call at 9546-DHARMA if you want to leave us a hot take or any thoughts that you would like to play, or you'd like for us to play on the show. Yes, if you don't have
the ability to call that number, go to Facebook, send us a voice message. We can do it from there. Also, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or your podcast player of choice. It makes us feel good, and it helps other people find the show. Mostly it makes us feel good.
Yes. Our theme music is by Andy G. Cohen. Our cover art is by Danny Roth.
Namaste.